Hello, everyone. Warm good evening to all our esteemed guests and dignitaries on the dais. Today, it's a wonderful Sunday, first week of July and first Sunday of July, and we are here to talk about a very interesting topic on integrating pharmacotherapy in tobacco cessation. Now, we move towards a scientific session. I'm happy to introduce to all our audience the moderator for the evening, Dr. Nandita Divekar. She is a consultant in anesthesia and critical care at Medway NHS Trust in UK. She's a lead for smoking cessation in her hospital and very passionate about the cause. She was pivotal in starting the STOP, the Stop Before the Op clinic. She and her two colleagues were awarded the CA Award for brilliance to study the Ottawa model, and recently she had been invited to talk about her experiences at the National Smoking Cessation and Health Conference in UK about the smoking cessation modalities. I invite ma'am to kindly take the session ahead.
Thank you, Shruti. Namaste to everyone and welcome and greetings from the UK. How true, isn't it? The world has the same problem, and WHO has described tobacco as the only legal drug that kills many of its users when used exactly as intended by the manufacturers. And if you think, oh, India is different and UK is different, no, we have the same problems, and COVID has actually made it worse sometimes because many people committed to quit, but at the same time, there have been many additional smokers. Thank you very much, Dr. Pawan Gupta, Dr. Reena Kumar, Dr. Desai, and all the dignitaries, and of course, Shruti, for inviting me to this prestigious conference and giving me the opportunity to be a moderator for this session and then come to a conclusion at the end. So I really hope that this e-conclave is really very successful and we can take it internationally as well. And now I hand over to Dr. Indraneel Haldar to chair the next session about varenicline. The stage is yours.
So thank you. And in the onset, good evening, everybody. And in the onset, I should give my thanks to ICANCare, the IH, BAS, and the Gujarat University to bring up such an academic international e-conclave on tobacco cessation, a seminar dedicated to tobacco cessation. And without wasting much of my time, I'll be going directly and requesting the next topic. The speaker will be Dr. Maloy Dave, who is a consultant psychiatrist in private practice and who has been awarded with Bombay Psychiatry Society Silver Jubilee Prize. He won the Anil Visa Best Paper Award, the year as PG teacher, an area of interest being the neuroscience, genetics, and a lot of publications in his name. So, Dr. Maloy Dave, please, it is up to you. The session is on varenicline. Please.
First of all, let me thank ICANCare and the organizers for inviting me to speak on this platform. It is my privilege to be here and talking about varenicline. Now, what I've done is I've just tried to give a very brief overview about, as I would put it, the life history of varenicline. And I'm saying life history because of what is happening currently with varenicline in the last few days. So let us begin with varenicline. Right. So, well, first and foremost, whatever studies and whatever medications we have for managing nicotine in practice for whosoever it is, whichever specialty, whether it is pulmonology, cardiology, psychiatry, these medications have been designed, or rather the studies with these medications have been on patients who smoke. Now, how does that actually translate to our population in the country where, if not equal, there are more number of people who use non-smoking forms of tobacco? The active constituent remains the same, that is nicotine, but whether we have a good effect of these medications, because cigarette smoking is easily quantifiable in terms of the type of cigarette or the number of cigarettes per day, but smokeless forms of tobacco are not very easy to quantify. Nonetheless, with that caveat in mind, we need to understand that nicotine, cigarette smoking, is one of the leading causes of premature deaths anywhere in the world. And cigarette smoking is associated with preventable illnesses in any organ system. Whether it's a cardiovascular system, it's a pulmonary system, whether it's the CNS, whether it is metabolism, whatever systems that we can think of has got some or the other ill effect of smoking in a susceptible individual. And as a psychiatrist, I can tell you that the number of psychiatric patients who smoke along with a diagnosable psychiatric illness are much more common than the general population. So I would roughly put it as that about half of my patients, half means that 50 to 60% of people who come to visit me take tobacco in one form or the other. Right. So this is how varenicline looks. We are never going to look at varenicline like this, but since it's a talk on varenicline, I thought that I would probably give a face to what I'm talking about. And this is varenicline. The chemical, I'm not even going to pronounce the names or give the chemical formula for that. But it was synthesized in 1997, and that is where the life history of varenicline begins. In the neuroscience-based nomenclature, it is called as acetylcholine receptor partial agonist medication. It works on, or it acts on, or it was supposed to be acting on when people actually found out what was varenicline. It acts on alpha-4 beta-2 acetylcholine, nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, and these receptors actually mediate the addictive properties of nicotine. When it comes to any kind of tobacco, nicotine is the chemical or the active component of tobacco in any form which drives the addiction. And there are a lot of other chemicals or components in the delivery system. So let's say cigarette or something else, BDs, which would contribute to a lot of other health issues, including cancers. Now, alpha-4 beta-2 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor partial agonists might improve abstinence rates compared to NRT. NRT, nicotine replacement therapy, is basically an agonist. Means these are nicotine-like molecules, nicotine-like products which are going to have a nicotinic effect, although in a more sustained format. Maybe it will not give as much high as as nicotine in a cigarette, but nonetheless it is nicotine, so it's an agonist. So when scientists were designing or looking at molecules which will act on the receptor system of nicotine, they found that a partial agonist. What is a partial agonist? It acts as both an agonist and an antagonist. So it has got a double role kind of thing, a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of a personality. So the agonist component might improve abstinence rates compared to NRT. And during the time of withdrawal, means when there is a sudden stoppage of the agonist activity of the partial agonist would replace nicotine and reduce the withdrawal. So there is, in the absence of nicotine, this will work as a slight agonist, not a full agonist. So some nicotinic activity is there. So the withdrawal is not a very acute or a very severe withdrawal. We need to remember one thing. In most of our patients, rather in all the patients who have been using nicotine, even though they would say that I'm going to stop it tomorrow, I know I've got heart problems, I've tried doing this before, I was successful for 1 week before, I was successful for 6 months before. If you really get into a bit of a depth and ask them what happened when they stopped, and they would say, no, I was very uneasy, I had difficulties with my appetite, I wouldn't get a proper bowel movement, and A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z. Restlessness, I was not able to focus. These are all the withdrawal symptoms of nicotine. And withdrawal is going to come when an individual has been using an agonist for a very long period of time and then stops suddenly. So when we have a partial agonist, what happens is, the idea is that this partial agonist will have some agonistic activity, nicotine-like activity. So when the active nicotine stops suddenly, there is still some nicotine inside, which will not allow the person to suffer a lot from the withdrawal symptoms, and hence would be compliant or adherent to the treatment regimen. The biggest problem with nicotine issues is that when people face or experience the slightest possible withdrawal, they'll restart again. And that is where there is this dilly-dallying. No, I'll stop, but I stopped yesterday. I was not comfortable. So I said, okay, let me take it for 2 days. I'll reduce it, and then so on and so forth. Whenever there's a relapse, means the patient is doing fine. He has been off nicotine, off smoking for a bit of time, for a variable period of time, for a very long time. He can still get into a relapse, which is commonly called as a slip. And when this relapse happens, the partial agonist, okay, even when the patient takes nicotine, will not allow the pleasurable effects of nicotine to happen. So if a person smokes again, he will not feel that much pleasure or that much relaxation or that much relief from anxiety or whatever it is as he was doing before. So he will not gradually use nicotine. Or if he feels नहीं मुझे एक cigarette से नहीं होता है, मैं 2 लेता हूँ, 4 लेता हूँ. The more nicotine increases, more of this antagonistic activity will happen, and the pleasure or the beneficial effect of nicotine will come. And that is how a partial agonist acts. Partial agonist, as I said, it is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, agonist, antagonistic in one molecule. So what chemists and scientists found out was that alpha-4 beta-2 nicotinic acetylcholinergic receptor is the main receptor that needs to be targeted. One. Second, you cannot just target it in one way. It has to be modulated in both ways, as an agonist, as an antagonist also. But they also found out that there is something called as alpha-6 beta-2. Now, receptors are not very simple molecules. They are just not one type of molecules. There are families and subfamilies of receptors. So there will be alpha receptor, 1 type, 2 type, beta, gamma, and so many. And each of them kind of form a network, and they subserve some or the other function related to acetylcholine as a receptor. And this, mind you, are the nicotinic acetylcholinergic receptors. We also have another subgroup of acetylcholinergic receptors called as the muscarinic receptors, which are not the point of discussion today. So when they designed molecules and when they finally kind of zeroed in or finalized that, okay, varenicline is all these things that we are looking at, they also found out when they were doing animal studies that varenicline also is a partial agonist, like what I described before, at alpha-6 beta-2 also. So we have got 2 families of receptors or 2 subfamilies of acetylcholinergic receptors. One is alpha-4 beta-2 and alpha-6 beta-2, which when subjected to the partial agonistic activity by varenicline, do we have what we are looking for? So what does happen when we target this? So the agonistic activity stimulates basal mesolimbic dopamine release to about half of nicotine. So if one cigarette gives me 100% of an effect, this might come somewhere close to 30-40% of the effect. So the agonistic effect. Second is it inhibits nicotine-induced dopamine release. That is the antagonistic effect. And therefore it reduces nicotine self-administration. To put it in scientific and biological terms, we are, when it comes to addictions, we are kind of self-programmed rats. Like what rat models are there to study all these kinds of things, addictions, whatever be the modality of addiction. What happens in the brain is almost similar. And that similarity, if I can explain in just one line, is that the dopaminergic system in all of us is at the, how would I say, is at the root of something called as the reward system. We do something because we like something. We like something, that's why we keep on doing it. We do something, we know that it brings us good things, good results, we want to keep on doing it again and again. Now, all this is mediated by dopamine. People who have addictions are supposed to have a low functioning dopaminergic system. So basically it's a dopaminergic system which is kind of telling us that, stimulate me more, I want to work. And so these people, I include us also, we keep on doing something so that it keeps on stimulating the dopamine system. This dopamine system makes us feel good. This dopamine system makes us want something, and this is the basis of addiction. Now, when we understand addiction more, we also understand that this dopaminergic system has got various inputs. So we will have an input from the acetylcholinergic system, which mediates nicotine addiction. And so when we target the alpha-6 beta-2 sub-receptor or subfamily of nicotinic acetylcholinergic receptors, we have this kind of an effect. We are giving an agonist, but it is not so powerful that it will really stimulate the dopaminergic system. In the absence of something, it will still maintain some dopamine so that we do not feel the craving or we do not feel the dysphoria. And even if nicotine acts and releases dopamine, there is the antagonistic activity which will reduce the level of functioning dopamine. So it kind of modulates the core of the addiction, which is the dopaminergic system. And that's why we found it useful. Okay, so coming to this diagram, it's a very simple thing that with the agonist, that is nicotine, let's say we get a response of 100. With a constant, with a partial agonist, we are never going to get this much effect. It will be somewhere 70 to 80 at its peak in a short period of time. And if we continue using it, this will come down, but it will never go to zero. So the patient is in a balanced kind of a state, no dysphoria, but no pleasure also from the agonist, that is nicotine. And it will make both withdrawal and it will make the craving easy to manage. Now, when we look at different substances, NRT, this is light gray, and black. We are concerned only about these two. When it comes to modulating the dopaminergic system, varenicline, if you see, has got the tallest and the deepest blocks. So when the effect has to be on alpha-4 beta-2 or alpha-6 beta-2 receptors, which is the core of addiction management, at least when it comes to nicotine, we have varenicline, which does a good job of targeting both. So what does varenicline do when it comes inside one system? So it has to be orally administered. There is no other parenteral administration. It is almost completely absorbed with a high bioavailability of 90% about. The time to maximum plasma concentration is 3 to 4 hours after a single dose, so it kind of peaks. The plasma elimination half-life is 24 hours, so it peaks and then it's slowly eliminated over a full day. And at the recommended doses, the standard protocol of 1 mg twice a day, which happens after 4th day of treatment, steady state levels are achieved, which is a good thing. Not much fluctuation, and the plasma levels range from 6 to 9.2 in adult smokers. The plasma protein binding is 20%, so it is not really tightly bound, so it is available to all the body systems, body tissues, including the brain. It has got a large volume of distribution. It is minimally metabolized and excreted almost unchanged in the urine, means there is no liver involvement anywhere. And it neither inhibits or induces the activity of CYP450 enzyme systems, which is again that group of isoenzymes which metabolize almost every known medication to us, any specialty, CYP450. So it doesn't tickle any of those enzymes. So there is no problem with inhibiting certain substrates or kind of inducing certain enzymes and then causing problems with the other medications that would probably be given. A point to note here is that more often than not, when we are looking at tobacco cessation, we are going to have patients who have got multiple morbidities, unless and until one gets the shock that, okay, smoking is causing me hypertension or a cardiac event or ABCD XYZ, or I've got a white patch, or it looks suspicious, somebody really scares. Till that time, nobody really thinks that I should look at quitting tobacco. Believe me, the very scary pictures on each and every tobacco, on each and every cigarette pack has not done much to put people away. People just don't look at it and they continue smoking, thinking that for the time being they're immortal and something is not really this thing is not really going to affect them. So what, it has happened to somebody else, it's not going to happen to you. But any first sign of something and they would be ready. So they are going to have certain comorbidities. Well, as I mentioned, when most of it is excreted unchanged in urine, so renal function does have an effect. If it's mild renal impairment, there is no need to change the dose. But if it is moderate or severe renal impairment, then we start with half the dose and keep half the dose as maintenance dose. So it's half of everything. Hepatic metabolism, not really important. So what are the studies of varenicline? Now, rather than going into each and every study, I'll just enumerate, right? So there have been a number of RCTs which have compared varenicline to bupropion, NRT patch, and placebo. Placebo has to be there. So the NNT for varenicline, NRT, and bupropion is 11, 23, and 22. Means varenicline, when it comes to tobacco cessation, has got a very good effect. If I give it to 11 patients, then the 12th one is going to have a benefit compared to the other two, which are almost double. It is effective in smokers with physical comorbidities, whether it is COPD, whether it is cardiovascular disease, including acute coronary syndrome. Yes, as I said, most of the time we are going to see and advise patients who have got some of the other problems. It's effective in smokers with psychiatric comorbidity also.
Dr. Malay, we are running out of time. Please, if you can make it short.
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Yeah,
2 minutes.
Thank you.
So we have this EAGLES psychiatric cohort which has studied the effect. Important thing is that less than 50% at the end of prescribed treatment will maintain abstinence and they'll keep going back to smoking. Quit date needs to be set. Ideally 1 week before quit date, we need to start the patient of varenicline. This is standard protocol. Initiate with 0.5 milligrams per day. After 3 days, 1 milligram per day, that is 0.5 BID. And after 4 days, till the end of 12 weeks, 1 milligram BID. To be taken after a full meal, best when there is a combined program, as previous speakers have mentioned. Total duration is 12 weeks, but in some people who have not responded completely, another 12 weeks can be given. So maximum studied interval for varenicline is 24 weeks. What predicts abstinence? Degree of dependence. Only strong indicator for abstinence. Men, women, there are a lot of conflicting findings, so not really important. So alternate treatments have been extending the use of varenicline. So as I said, from 12 weeks, somebody will need another 12 weeks more. So those participants who fail to quit smoking or smokers with a lot of comorbidities, yes. Varenicline preloading. Somebody said that instead of only 1 week before quit date, we give for 1 full month and see, so that all the receptor balance is adequate. A flexible target quit date between 8th day and 35th day. So start, let the slow reduction or let the quitting happen during the course of treatment. And reduce to quit is also a strategy that some people have used. People with poor tolerability, low dose varenicline, high dose can also be given, but not really approved, and will have its side effects, of course. Retreatment, some people have done 1 course, not effective, so do not continue, but after a period of time, evaluate all the factors and you can give another trial. Combination with NRT, combination with bupropion have given slightly better results, not exceptionally great. The adverse effects, the dose-dependent effects are nausea, vomiting, constipation, flatulence. Some people have complained of insomnia, headache, and abnormal dreams. Nothing very great. Probably this happened with each and every medication that we know of. But what was important is that people found out there are some people who complained of development of psychiatric symptoms, anxiety, depression. But the EAGLES study said that it is not that great, so we can really continue. In fact, as psychiatrists, we do continue. We are going to deal with these patients only. So whether varenicline, bupropion, a mixture of everything, we have not seen a tremendous increase in psychiatric symptoms. But because of that, there was an FDA black box kind of warning, which was thankfully removed around 2016, 4-5 years back. So FDA says that no, varenicline is safe when it comes to emergence of psychiatric complaints. Not recommended during pregnancy, especially first trimester, probably excreted in breast milk. So well, we do not recommend. But that's where the story of varenicline is going to take a turn. We do not know, because this is just about 5-6 days back when the developers, producers, distributors, that is Pfizer, they sent out this press release that the Chantix or Champix, that's by the name of, by which name it is available in India, it probably is contaminated with certain carcinogens, nitrosamines. And because of this, they have kind of, sort of put a stop on distribution and usage of varenicline. So start 1997, 2021, June 25. Now we do not know what is going to happen because they have withdrawn this from the market as of now, though they are claiming that we'll study it more. And they feel that the concentration of nitrosamine is not that great to really cause carcinogenic effects, but we'll need to wait and watch what the company has to say after a period of time. Thank you so much for being patient. Over to the chairpersons. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dave, for your very informative lecture about varenicline and the latest news about it as well. I pass it over to Dr. Haldar, please, for his comments.
So thank you, Dr. Molloy Dave, for your very excellent and elaborate discussion on this topic. Really, we have created an insight on the drug. And just to summarize, it's a partial nicotine acetylcholine receptor agonist designed to partially activate this system while displacing the nicotine at its site of action in the brain. So with this, since we are running short of time, I should hand over the mic to the organizers, please.
Hello, thank you very much, Dr. Haldar, for chairing this session.